Oh, I'm so sorry. Good afternoon. I'm so sorry. I left today at well, we give ourselves about an hour for traffic. And it decided that, oh my God, it was like the worst. It was the worst traffic, but still, I didn't get a train. So I didn't get loads of trains cancelled. I managed to not row with my husband while stuck in like traffic for about 10 miles. That was nearly standstill. So a miracle in many ways. So thank you very much for coming. I understand there's quite a lot of our regulars that are marching today for another sort of issue. But I'm glad that despite the global affairs, that many of us are still able to centre women as our cause, because we often get just mixed into men's causes, and then those men's causes, weirdly, human causes or other types of cause centre around men, which is why I'm really delighted that you have decided to come today. So I understand we will be at the pub, and some of our regulars who've chosen to march will be there also. So it's our last one before Christmas. So how I want to start this is, I know. What a day this has been, what a rare mood I'm in, why it's almost like being a... Oh, how lovely. I guess what we've had recently is good news. And I want to just warn you against good news. And the reason I want to warn you against good news is we've been told for months, years, that actually it's not really the government in charge, it's the civil servants. And I don't remember a mass exodus or sacking of those civil servants. So I'm pretty sure that whatever Rishi says, and let's face it, I think it'll be Keir Starmer in a year's time, but whatever Rishi says, there are loads of people along that food chain that will need to catch up. And I'm betting, because of teachers' unions being so powerful, that nobody's going to catch up anytime soon. Can I just ask people very nicely, if you're smoking and you're in the vicinity of the front people, could you kindly go somewhere else? Because that's all right now I can breathe. Thanks so much. It almost feels like I'm standing in a ashtray. Sorry, I know it's socially acceptable to smoke outside, but that's all I can breathe. Right, so the teaching unions, that's where they catch them young, as Russell T Davis, old ruiner of Doctor Who, and David Tennant wearing his little trans TARDIS. The whole poisoning of kids' TV, doctors, I don't know if anyone even watches that. Not many people can get an appointment to an actual doctor's. So I don't know if anybody actually watches the programme Doctors. I think their budget is about as cheap as the furry outfit that they showed. Pivotal place in our human history in this country where the adults really have lost the room. And that's why we're going to actually kick off the party in order to raise enough funds to get a barrister to push it through, because I now can't even get a confirmation of submitting a revised application. So there is something going on. I don't know what, but there is something really rotten going on. And if it's the place in which you ask to represent people in this country democratically, if there's rot there, and let's face it, I got an email from someone with a she, her pronoun signature, and if you read their website, it doesn't say we're corrupt, it does say that we're equal. We like equality, and as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of the same thing. Once you talk about diversity and inclusion, you basically say you're captured, and the fundamental foundation upon which you previously stood is no longer your primary function. So I firmly believe that very many places in this country, for example, most police forces, have at the top of it like a really nasty whiff of corruption that filters right the way down through the bottom. And And we have to go against the equality bench book, which basically has infiltrated all our courts. And I think once the courts are infiltrated, and in the United States of America it's even worse, they are just about to be compelled in courts to use preferred pronouns or be in contempt. Now I think it's here, but it's not that explicit. But you can lose your license in the United States of America. That's what they're trying to bring in. If you, as a sort of a legal implement, as a person practicing law, if you dare to go in court and call a man, you can lose your license. So we really are, this is something that they're trying to bring through. And if you need further information, there's an amazing legal mind called, yeah, I don't really like looking at myself the whole time, Mary.
You've got it on selfie mode.
Okay, how do I do that? If I do that. Okay. So everybody now, when you come and talk, you can see yourself. So it's most disconcerting, especially as I look about 3 foot wide. So anyway, so this is what we intend to do. So the Party of Women will register. You will ask to become members. We will subject ourselves to the same sort of rules as if we were actually a party, because we think we will be a party. We have no idea how they've managed to refuse us thus far. And there's lots of tricks that we've used to see whether it's a prejudicial kind of refusal. All you need is one activist in that organisation for it to be fucked. One. You just need one activist in a staff room to corrupt a whole school. You know, it really does just take one bad apple. And I think actually it's propagated with loads of bad apples. But as soon as we register, if you want to become a member, we would welcome that more than ever. We want all of you people, don't just register, we want you to be councillors, we want you to be PCCs, we want you to be MPs, we want you to be in every elected position, because I don't know if you've noticed, but certain populations in this country, regardless of whatever ideology they belong to, they infiltrate and populate places where decisions are made. And then the next minute, everyone's like, what happened? How did so many bad things happen in that particular area? How did so many men calling themselves women get onto committees in councils that look at child safeguarding? Like, how has that happened? How has it happened that that council decided to go gender neutral on every single toilet in its building? How did that happen? Well, that's how it happens. You just get one person in that room to want to corrupt the whole place. And we now have to be the one person in that room to undo the corruption and to refocus safeguarding on safeguarding. Children's services on children, not the validation of adults using those children. So when it comes to adoption, when it comes to fostering, if you have any expertise in that area, I suggest you try and become an advocate in that area. At your local council, that's something that you can do. You can join certain committees, and that's what I would recommend you do. Okay? Now, people at home, if you'd like to help what happens here, it's free for everyone to come and stand in the freezing cold. And if you buy one of these umbrellas, you just need to buy about 200 of them, maybe 3, and we can put on an event like this. So that's what we're asking for. We say, be the billboard, join in, and I mean, come on. How good is this? How good is this umbrella? And we've got lots of people with bright pink ones and a suffragette one too. Have I got them? No. I don't sell in the park. just myself and my ideas. Okay, so how we work as you come and talk. There's not many of us here, so you can even stretch your speeches a bit longer if you like, but I'm so very late, so I do apologise again. Who would like to speak? Yes? As loud as you can.
Right, I'm glad I'm on first because I've got really bad asthma and this rain doesn't help. I just want to say about, although there have been some positive developments, there have been young lesbians, teenage lesbians, older, possibly a bit older lesbians are still being erased. and it's still awful that it's happening. The positive aspect that has happened is that there has been a consultation on the use of puberty blockers, but I don't know how many of you here actually responded to that. Did any of you respond? One? Oh, that's a shame. One here, because I imagine that the trans lobby responded to it and said, oh, we should still keep giving kids puberty blockers, etc. So, but there was a consultation from it and on it, and that was one positive thing if they got the right answers. But the lesbian erasure, I mean, what's bad about it, and as Kellie-Jay has just pointed out, it's the erasure of young lesbians has been mainstream, basically. It's being taught about in schools. Girls who are same-sex attracted are being referred by counsellors to get to the GIDS clinics. The GIDS clinics are still operating when they were supposed to have ended this year, and they're going to carry on. So they're still being mutilated by puberty blockers, and then moving on to surgery. They're still having their body mutilated. There's also, as Kellie-Jay has mentioned, there's what's happening in universities. Again, there's been the promotion of gender identity ideology in universities, and I think if you object to that promotion, you sort of get cancelled. Stonewall as a lobby group has still got a lot of power, and the fact is that although the Tory government has promised all sorts of things, which is, and has brought in the teaching in schools on gender identity. If Labour gets in, they're going to be even worse, and I think they probably will get in. And they're sort of wedded to Stonewall as a lobby group. So what's going to happen? What can we do? Well, we still got to continue to objecting to the erasure of young lesbians, to medical intervention on their bodies, to surgery. I mean, what's happening now is even worse in a way, because if they're age 17, they're going to be allowed to move on to surgery and adult services for transgenderism, and there's a couple of court cases actually objecting to that. There are 2,000 young lesbians on a waiting list to have phalloplasty. Again, this comes from the gender clinics. I mean, it's still all really shocking. And if you don't know what phalloplasty is, it's about having a false penis put on your body, and your body being really mutilated in the process. So it's really important that we continue to campaign against the mutilation and the abuse of young lesbians, and it is mainly young lesbians, because if they're left alone, they will, as they mature, realise that they can actually define themselves as lesbians, and being lesbian is a positive experience. Right, let's stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Just to say, I don't want to disagree with my speakers, but I actually don't think it is majority young lesbians. I think now it's so broad that whilst probably proportionately the girls that would end up to be happy old lesbians, proportionately I think they are being targeted, but I think there's a lot of heterosexual, bisexual girls that have been autistic girls are probably the most represented, are being persuaded by this. I was in a coffee shop in my hometown, and one of the girls recognised me who was working behind the counter. Two of the staff in that one shop had sisters who now called themselves gay men. Two, who were in supposedly in a gay relationship with men, with gay men. And it's so difficult, I think, for most people, which is why language is so important. It's so difficult for most people to get their heads around what does that mean? Well, we're talking about a straight couple, both pretending to be gay men. So I think when you do talk to people, and we were persuaded by certain organisations with large platforms and who still sort of seem to occupy some sort of authoritarian or authority sort of in this, and I would say categorically, they have shown themselves not to be experts at all, but they sort of tried to bring into the fold the likes of Dave the AGP Hayton, and other men, and also to get people to use trans women, otherwise people wouldn't know what we were talking about. Well, now, so many people think if you talk about a trans man that you mean a bloke in a dress, or a trans woman, you mean a woman who is going to be one of the 262 using the NHS hospital to get their phalloplasty. Then the Chelsea and Westminster, I think it is, they have a plan to do about 260 phalloplasties a year. I think that's on that's on us. That's on all of you that have ever paid a single penny in tax. And as part of their service, they have a nurse whose job it is to try and save dying tissue. So their job would be, when somebody has a really, really complicated operation, to try and make sure that the tissue doesn't die, and try and offer solutions to repair stuff that won't fix together. Now, why would they need a nurse like that in a hospital whose job it is to slice the entirety of someone's forearm, because that's less hairy than the leg, and then to slice off a big chunk of the leg to repair the forearm, to then make a phallus, which I don't have a penis, I've seen some, and they don't look anything like what somebody can create out of an arm. And I've got quite a young woman runs a store, she's amazing, and we were talking about it, and I showed her a picture, and she said, oh my God, oh my God, that looks like a tattoo. I was like, it's a tattoo from somebody's arm, where they've had their arm sewn as a pretend penis, and because they're in America, it's supposed to look like a circumcised penis. So then they've had a different shape around the end, which is where the tattoo was. And then we just got into, most people have no idea that these girls have these pieces of necrosis kind of flesh sewn onto their bodies, sometimes just under the belly button, sometimes to the left or to the right. And then they might need a little hand pump, but clearly there's no sensation. I mean, one thing I do know about the male appendage is it's relatively sensitive. More so than my forearm, I understand. I don't think anyone's got all tingly by someone just stroking her arm for about 55 seconds in a row at a pace. So, I'm just saying, I don't want to be graphic, I'm just trying to illustrate there might be a difference between a fake penis and a real one. But anyway, these girls, and then maybe some of you have seen the girls who get euphoric. After they've had their breasts sliced off, you then see them posing topless on a beach saying, I could never have done this as a girl. I could never have done this. Now I'm a boy, I feel so liberated and free. And you're like, I reckon you're just fixated on your breasts. I think maybe you should have had some counselling about why you're so fixated that your breasts inhibit you from actually living a full life, and why you feel that there's some connection, because you won't feel it for long when you realise it's not actually a solution at all. Or there's another girl who's spent a year in hospital with 32 corrective surgeries, which included correcting the fact that she was urinating out of her anus and had multiple infections. And then she's in the car on her way home from hospital and she's like euphoric and crying, and she's so happy because she's just weed standing up in a public toilet. Like that was what she was looking for. That was a year in hospital and 32 very dangerous high failure rate surgeries. So this is what we're talking about. So I just like to remind you always, just go back when you're talking to someone, just go back to kind of some of the, I think we need to go a bit nuclear on this and actually talk about the worst of it and then work backwards. So hook someone in with the worst of it and then work backwards to the gaslighting of kids in school, because nobody seems to care. Russell T Davies has been interviewed recently saying you need to get them young, you know, to convince people, to stop people being transphobic. With the new doctor's assistant with his huge male skull, you need to get them young. He's not even an alien. He's actually playing a human. But you need to get them young. Like, these people are actually saying these things out loud, unaware that we all can spot the groomer. Anyway, yes. You coming? Oh, look at your little Christmas pudding. It's so nice.
I didn't wear my woman hat because I wanted to wear my warmer Christmas pudding.
What is? Oh, okay, fine.
So what we do?
You can speak something.
Where am I speaking? That one? Speaking loud, ideally. What made me decide to think again about speaking was I was at a meeting of Bristol Policy Watch, which is all about Bristol who have gone completely woke and ridiculous and passed this bad policy. And then I said to somebody after the meeting, it's not really my thing going through policies with a fine-tooth comb and writing long emails. And she said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I do go and speak at Let Women Speak. And she said, what's the point?
Oh, big point.
So I thought I'd tell you what the point is, why I come and talk to you here about biology, because I think, well, most of you have probably forgotten all your school biology. I do know my biology really, really well. First class degree, half a PhD in genetics from Cambridge, which I had to jack in because it was so sexist at that point. And I just wanted to ground everybody in the knowledge that we are part of the natural world. We are encouraged all the time to forget that we are in the kingdom animalia. You know, when people are using animals as an insult, which I've always hated. Oh, you're an animal. No, animals are animals. We are animals. We're human animals. So I just think maybe if I really tell you the truth and you trust me, you'll be a bit more secure about challenging some of this stuff, particularly the language. We still see people all the time talking about male to female transsexuals. You cannot change from male to female. I don't know how you'd have to make it a longer phrase to replace MTF, but there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to avoid. Well, yes, I do, but then, you know, there's certain contexts where MTF is quick. And I remember being really cross right back in 2004 about them calling them transsexuals, because I've always known you can't change sex. So, little recap of, I think, the very first time I made a speech, which was 2018, when we were over there. And Mr. Menno came and talked for 20 minutes and had to be told, just let some women speak now, please, Menno. He was so on fire. So I couldn't find my notes from that occasion. I had to make a few more. So look, we have sexual reproduction. We are sexual beings. There's actually no such thing as an asexual human unless you completely redefine it and you don't use the biological definition. Biological definition is one parent. That is asexual reproduction. Lots of plants have it, actually, because if they can't manage to get pollinated in their flowers, which are, of course, organs of sexual reproduction, they have to try and reproduce somehow. So you have bulbs and corms and runners and all that, you know. Plants that have little baby plants around the leaves, all wonderful stuff. But plants have a bit of a trouble necessarily finding a mate because they can't move. Whereas, on the other hand, almost all animals use sexual reproduction, and that's because it's helped in evolution. It means you have variation in the offspring. None of you are going to be exactly the same as your siblings, even though you've got the same parents, unless you're identical twins. Where are they? Or identical twins. So that's why it's favoured. And there are some very interesting little fungi and things that have gametes that are the same size. 2 swimming gametes. But it's like getting lost in Safeway. If both of you are moving around, it's really hard to find each other. Plus, you've got to have in the gamete a certain amount of food in order to get the embryo on its way after fertilisation. So, asexually, but some aphids do. That's how they manage to multiply like mad in the spring. Greenfly, they do that asexually. The eggs can develop without fertilisation and you get loads of aphids all over your roses. In the autumn, because the zygote that forms is resistant to cold weather and that, they reproduce sexually in the autumn. Right, so lots and lots of plants. And very soon we got this thing called anisogamy, which means you have one big gamete with the food in, which doesn't have to move around, and one little gamete produced in large numbers, which move around. And, I was looking up some of this stuff. Small, the male gametes are just a bit of DNA and some flagella, which are the tails. Apparently some ferns, they have hundreds of flagella on their male gametes, on their sperm, hundreds. There's amazing pictures that I looked up. I know mosses have 2. They have 2 little flagella and they swim to the female gamete. And that's why mosses are in damp places, because they have to have some water to reproduce sexually. And then the old kingdom, I'll get to humans soon and shut up. I could talk for hours on biology. I really miss having had to retire when I was required to both teach A-level biology and say that these girls are boys. You know, I just couldn't cope. I mean, I was over retirement age, so that was lucky. I don't know what I'd have done if I'd been 45. You know, I just couldn't do it. It's lies, all of it. So getting to the animals, kingdom Animalia, there's loads of weird things like starfishes and sea anemones and, you know, lots and lots of them. But the vertebrates, fish, amphibia, reptiles, birds, mammals. Fish, they have weird mating systems. Some of them, they're very interesting. Amphibia, reptiles. Sex is not determined like it is in birds and mammals. Birds have eggs which are different and sperm which are all the same. So the female determines the sex of the offspring. Mammals, it's the other way around, just one of these things that happened in evolution. So in humans, XX, XY, sperms are either X or Y, all the eggs are X. And when the sperm meets the egg up near the ovary, fertilisation, not conception, please, forget that word, that's when your sex is determined. 5 days before you're even pregnant.
What about the clownfish?
I told you, fishes are weird. And there is a fish that has, the male is a complete parasite. It's just a testis attached to the female.
Just a fish.
So we mammals, we wonderful birds, they have internal fertilisation because the gametes, sperms have got to get to the egg before the shell's on, right? And the biggest bird egg is an ostrich egg, which weighs 2 kilos and measures 6 inches by 5 inches. If we had to lay eggs, in order for the egg to have all the food to get from fertilisation to baby, our eggs would be like this big. So the really clever thing that mammals do is grow the baby inside. So our eggs are like 1/10 of a millimetre, because as soon as they've got into the womb, they've got all the food from the mother and the placenta. And it's also great because you don't have to leave the nest with all the eggs in to be eaten, because you're carrying your baby around with you. So, and the last thing I wanted to say is that nature does make mistakes. I could talk for ages about DSDs and things, but I'm not going to do that today. There are a few mistakes, but mostly it's XX, XY, and a few 0.018% of people who don't develop perfectly normal reproductive systems and leave them out of it, they're nothing to do with us. 0.018%, about 100 babies a year in the whole of the UK are born with ambiguous genitalia. 0.018. They keep saying things like 2%. No, fuck off with that. It's not 2%. In fact, they include things like penises, having the exit at the end of the penis a little bit round towards the underneath of the penis instead of it being straight out. It's just slightly underneath, just because the joining up thing that happens when a penis forms, it's a bit like this, your face grows round, hasn't quite worked, so it's slightly underneath, so they call that intersex. I mean, it's nonsense, bollocks, all of it. So trust me, I'm your biologist. Ask me any questions if you want, because I am very well informed. Thank you. Oh yeah, microphone.
Can I just confirm? He can talk for hours. Oh no, I'm joking. But her knowledge is pretty much endless, and I mean that in a good way. Who else would like to speak? Should we take you first? Do you want? You'll be all right. Ooh. Let me just do this.
Thank you.
So everyone can hear.
Thanks very much. Hello everyone. Is everyone feeling happy to be stood out here in the cold? Yeah, we love it, don't we? Hi everyone. I was actually wanting to come and speak about the neglect of the issue about the sexual violence that was very much part of a tactic of war that went on in the recent terrible terrorism in Israel, and then compounding that, the gaslighting of the entire world about it. So I'm just going to quickly give credit to the people that are marching today in support of Israel. Then I wanted to talk about Rosie Duffield, who we find out this morning has been told that she's not going to be able to stand as a Labour MP in her very marginal constituency. She was the first person ever to win it from the Tories. She's the only Labour MP in Kent. And then I thought, well, maybe I should talk about the man in the blue dress, because we still have got a lot to talk about. And this has been called the AGP gate by some people, and it relates to a man who came to a conference run by GenSpect in Denver wearing what could only be described as his little sister's prom dress, which was blue velvet, which he combined with some football socks, some blue trainers, and some what looked to me like football socks with the ends cut off that made like arm warmers. I mean, you know, human sexuality is incredibly varied, is all I can say, because that was, as a combination, it works for him and nobody else on the planet. But that is the purpose of autogynephilia, which is a sexual fetish which these men struggle with, because they do struggle with it, it seems. It seems that it is so compelling, these unusual ideas and drives. A fetish is any sexual compulsion that isn't about a partner and perhaps partner's characteristics and perhaps partner's secondary sexual characteristics, but is about either an inanimate object or a part of the body that isn't a secondary sexual characteristic, or a consenting partner. Perhaps they are a baby, perhaps they are an animal, perhaps they are a disembodied foot, perhaps they are a rubber balloon. But there are many and varied of these fetishes and tend to group together. People that develop one have already wired their brains in a funny way, and it can jump onto other things as well. So you will find them grouping together the people that like hurting men. You are correct, thank you. Yeah. So overwhelmingly, these are men. There are very, very, very few women who develop specific unusual ideas, but it is by and large a huge majority of men that have this. And it will group together, so one will encourage the development of another. So you might start out a sadist, and then you might start thinking, I like inflicting pain, I'm going to inflict pain on adult partners, and then you might decide to inflict pain on animal partners, and then you might decide you like inflicting pain on human children, and you will become more and more degenerate as your very soul is destroyed, as the compulsions take over your life. So what we've done as a society by enabling autogynephilia is actually incredibly dangerous. First of all, for the men themselves, who are going down a path, going down a rabbit hole towards absolute degeneration as a human, where there are no limits to the levels of perversion, the levels of degeneracy that they will experience. Their next victims are the people in the closest contact to them, which are their wives and their children, because most of these men develop these fetishes over quite a long period of time, and it becomes public after a period of many years of escalation. During that time, they may have exposed their family members, their wives, their children to escalating levels of coercive control, sexual and physical abuse within the home, which may have been hidden to the rest of the world for many years. But we see you, we see what you're doing, and we can name it as male violence, part of the continuum of male violence. This is a thing that feminism has recently become particularly concerned about, because transsexuality or transgenderism used to be something that was more confined to a very small subset of men, and now it has exploded, and most of these men are now heterosexual middle-aged men whose fetishes have overwhelmed their entire lives, and their entire life is now devoted to the fetish. There is nothing else. It's like it's hollowed out their entire personality. There's nothing left. Anyway, so the point of this is to say that when a man is exhibiting a fetish in a public place, he is showing a dangerous escalation in that fetish. It has gone beyond something he's experiencing in his head. It's gone beyond something that he's looking for online. It's gone beyond something that he's experiencing in his head, looking for online, and perhaps he's talking to another person that's on the same journey. And then it's gone beyond that into perhaps exposing his wife and his children to it. And then it's gone beyond that into meeting up in real life with other men that share the same fetish, that are also abusing their wives and children and are looking online for more victims. So you can see that by the time they're coming out into public and sharing that with, they are 50 steps down the road. It is not something that is innocent. It is not something that is harmless. We are all harmed by this. My children are harmed by this. Your children are harmed by this. We are harmed by it. They're harmed by it too, and so are their wives and children. But we are all being harmed by it by the time they are in public. Mandated reporters, safeguarders, people who are responsible for the mental health of other people must be aware of this. All of us must be aware of it. There are no excuses. This is basic safeguarding. If a man was to walk into a room where I had a bunch of people who were very vulnerable, perhaps they'd been abused in a medical setting, perhaps they'd managed to claw their way out of that, perhaps there's a room with women who've experienced domestic violence, coercive control, people that are vulnerable in different ways with experiences of male violence, and a man like that walks into the room, what do you think my responsibility is to those people? Then my responsibility is to reduce the harm to those people in that room. My responsibility is to remove the harmful element from that room. And anything less than that is a disgusting failure of responsibility. It's a failure in safeguarding, and shame on you to anyone that fails to safeguard people that they are responsible for. That's it. All right.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? We keep getting like harmless. I mean, these men in schools and everyone's like, oh, it's a stunning brave. It's a special kind of trick, isn't it? Or rather, it's a special kind of failure that no matter how many times massive, great big scandals come and show themselves and we're all going, oh, well, how could that have happened? And those same people that ask those questions basically do the same, and it happens again, and 10 years later people ask of them, how did you let it happen? Well, you let it happen by staying quiet, minimizing. So much minimizing goes on all the time. When I was in that conversation with those teachers, I can't tell you, there's sort of, one of the women, I can't even show you because otherwise I'd have to reveal my eyes. But one of the women just like sat there, and when I said, what did I say? I said something about harm, would you make her use the pronouns or something? And she sort of rolled her eyes. I highlighted some sort of safeguarding thing, and she rolled her eyes. And I was talking to a friend, a male friend, and I said to him, you know, these teachers are so captured. Like, you know, are they frightened going along with it? And he goes, no, they hold you in complete contempt. They think you're wrong. So those people going along with it in schools, they're not just captured, they think you're wrong. They think you're making a fuss about nothing. They think you're a little bit backward. They think, like, how dare you come in and question them and their relationship with your children? Who do you think you are? And I think that once that kind of, and I'm so thankful that happened before I went in the meeting, because I was kind of thinking that some of these teachers are victims. And then by the time I got to the meeting, I was feeling like, fuck it, I really don't think these teachers are victims. I think actually if you go along with it, even if in your private conversations you admit that it's wrong, if you still go along with it, then you are holding those children in contempt. You are actually saying that even though you know it's wrong, you're still happy to do it to get through your day. Big for you. Like, great for you. You get to the end of your day, and at the same time, you get to impart this despicable, lying, dishonest, vile ideology onto children. And I've seen on Twitter over the last, like, since Wankgate, because let's face it, that's what he was doing. Since that sort of discussion, I've seen so many women going, I thought his dress was nice. Like, even women that dare to call them GC, and I gender critical for me is a really pants concept, because it means that you accept that there is a notion of gender which is somehow innate, which is how it's propagated now, as opposed to gender roles, which is how feminists of old used to use it. They used to talk about what we were expected to do as women was a gender role, not that we sort of grew into some sort of gender. It's just the expectations, an external thing, and now gender is fed to everybody like it's an internal thing. So when these women, so-called gender critical, so-called know what a bloke is, women, start going, well, I thought he looked quite nice. Or other appeasing things, like Debbie, I've met Debbie, and he knows he's a man. Really? Is that why he calls himself Debbie? Is that why he still takes estrogen to have fake, I mean, he claims that he hasn't had surgery, I don't know. But he claims that he calls his breasts natural breasts. So he calls himself Debbie. He wears clothing in order to force people that he meets on a daily basis to interact with him as if they think he's also a woman or deserves the respect or the pronouns or whatever as a woman. So don't tell me that these AGPs, oh, they know they're a man. Well, then why are they dressed like that? Why are they behaving like that? Why are they trying to, this is what grooming is. Like, every single bad thing doesn't start with a massive explosion. It builds up. It brings you in. It encroaches upon your boundaries. These AGPs in their home, their wives don't get home one day and they're in full women's clothing and underwear. It starts off with, oh, I'm just gonna paint my nails. What do you think? And the wife goes, I don't really like it actually. I find it uncomfortable. Oh no, I'm only gonna just try it just once. It's quite fun, isn't it? Week later, still wearing the nail varnish. I'm just going to put a tiny bit of eye makeup on. I'm uncomfortable. That's all right. It doesn't mean anything. It's fine. It's fun. It's just a bit of fun. It's just you'll get used to it. And then those men are then, before you know it, there's 2,000 selfies of them in women's underwear on the bed on their own. And then their wives are involved in that. And then they force their wives, the final act of humiliation for those wives. The big crunch is when they force their wives to go out with them when they're wearing their fetish gear. So that's the next level of, when you talk about escalation, that's what they do. And then by that point, their wives have they've lost everything. They're coercively controlled and they've got no way out of this. And if they're lucky, those men haven't tried to enforce their teenage daughters into the fantasy by asking about sharing tampons, sanitary towels, what it feels like to have developing breasts. And let's face it, a lot of these men come out when their wives are pregnant or when their daughters hit puberty. These are times where these men just can't bear the fact that anybody else has more attention than them, so they have to join in. They don't know what they've come for. Who else would like to speak? You in pink. It's a very gender conforming colour.
I wanted to be a boy, so.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm sure some of you know me. My name's Hazel. I'm a desister, which means I used to identify as trans, but then I re-identified with my birth sex before I could medicalize myself. I still consider myself incredibly lucky that I desisted before I could do anything irreversible. Another thing about me is that I'm autistic. This is something I didn't discover until I was in my late 20s, when my daughter was going through the assessment process. Today I wanted to talk about my experiences as an undiagnosed autistic teenager who inadvertently fell into the claws of gender ideology. Autistic people are more vulnerable to this. If you know anything about autistic people, you'll likely know that we experience something called special interests. The most common ones you will have heard are those of stereotypical autistic boys, such as trains or dinosaurs. My personal experience of special interests is that they can be involuntary obsessions that swoop in out of nowhere and entirely take over my life. This is harmless for the most part when the special interest is something like Pokemon Go, or when I fell in love with James May from Top Gear when I was 18. But other times they can be a lot more sinister, and I believe that my want to transition was one of my most destructive special interests. Having been introduced to the concept of transitioning through YouTube and live journal communities in 2009 at 17 years old, I became dangerously obsessed. Very quickly I spiraled into depression, self-harm and suicidal ideation. I spent my time online, researching surgeries and talking to other trans people who would say to gender questioning individuals things like, "If you think you're trans, you probably are." I cut my hair off, I started dressing even more like a man, and I started going by the name Aaron. I lost my happy spark and my ability to feel confident in the cheerful, quirky, gender non-conforming girl I used to be. I lost myself. I was referred to a gender identity clinic by my GP. All I could think about night and day was getting on hormones, getting surgery, and turning myself into the man that I desperately wanted to be. By the time the special interest faded, as they all do, I'd been kicked out of my home by my mother, and I was left feeling disoriented, lost, and terrified by what I'd almost done to myself. Growing up, my mother always called me a tomboy. The word felt like a pejorative coming from her. She desperately wanted a daughter who she could dress in pretty pink dresses, bows and frilly socks. In response to my boyish interests and rejection of all things girly, she frequently told me, "You should have been born a boy." Another autistic trait is the tendency to take things literally, to experience black and white thinking in a way that leaves you unable to see nuance. So when told by my mother, "You should have been born a boy," it's easy to take that at face value. And when I struggled to fit in with girls at school, but thrived in friendships with boys, it was easy to fall into the belief that I should have been male, that I was simply a boy born in the wrong body. I was bullied by my peers for being different, told to stay in my gender. My guy friends didn't see me as an equal, and I stuck out like a sore thumb as the only girl in a friendship group of nerdy boys. I felt that transitioning to male would fix all of these problems. I'd be a normal boy instead of a weird and different girl who struggles to fit in anywhere. Because as autistics, we like to categorize things, and I felt like I fit much more neatly into the big box marked boy. I felt like my personality, interests, and my inability to befriend other girls meant that I couldn't possibly have been meant to be a girl. What I desperately needed someone to tell me is that there's no right way to be a girl, that it's absolutely okay to be a girl who doesn't act like other girls. It's okay to be different. That being a girl isn't liking makeup or possessing the ability to act like and fit in with other girls in my peer group. What I needed to know was that being a girl is simply being born female, and that what you choose to do with it from there is entirely up to you. I remained a trans ally for the longest time, but with age came maturity and the ability to see other autistic kids falling into the same trap as I had. As a mother to an autistic child, I felt it my duty to do everything in my power to try to protect today's autistic youth from going through what I did, or worse. It's for them that I stand here today, and it is for them that I speak out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Hazel. Okay. Yes. Can I just say tea towels are nearly sold out, just in case. We've got about 25% of the stock left.
I thought we'd have to hear you speak for quite a long time before I got a chance, Kelly.
No, it's all right. You can drone on now.
Oh, I can drone on, thank you. Hello, Dee. Lovely to see everybody again. I'm Radical Cartoons. I was cancelled by the Morning Star. A lot of you already know my story, so I won't bore you with it. I've fantastic speakers again today, especially the last lady and the lady before. I was really, and of course, Alison with her biology lesson. We can always do with one of them, can't we? So I just want to say it's wonderful that everybody's here in the freezing cold. Have I got the most Kellie-Jay kit on today of anybody? I've got the socks, I've got the hoodie, I've got the scarf, and I've got one of the new cat identifies as a dog beanies. So I've got everything. I might have the most KJK kit on today of anybody. So am I a good advert for it? I don't know, but never mind. I want to talk about something nobody else has talked about. Somebody has asked me today in the crowd, is Kellie-Jay doing the right thing by sort of gallivanting around the world, going to different countries when we haven't sorted everything out here yet? And I have said, yes, absolutely. And if you look at last week, New Zealand have just had a general election. They have elected a centre-right government coalition, which has a massive list of policies protecting women and girls in sports, in spaces, in schools, everything. That is in no small part due to Kellie-Jay going there and waking them up to the misogyny at great personal risk to herself and the other women who helped her to organise it over there, at great personal risk to themselves. They showed the whole world what the misogyny in this trans movement is all about. Right, I'm not afraid to say that on camera. I'm not afraid to hide my face. People to me online, how will we recognise you at Reformers Tree? I said, that's my avatar. That's my actual face. Come up and say hello, all right? Come up and say hello. So there is a lady called No BS who's in the live streams. If you're here today, come up and say hello, please, because you wanted to say hello. So I wanted to talk about the New Zealand general election result. New Zealand, the wokest pinpoint on the bottom of the earth. I could be ruder than that. A terrible woke country. We thought they were the worst. I mean, maybe Canada is the worst, but we thought New Zealand was pretty bad, and look what they've done. The country has woken up. You may not like it that they've elected a right centrist government. So what? Let's get this issue sorted out, and then everybody can go back to arguing about equal pay.
Yeah.
Let's get the misogyny sorted out. And then everybody can go back to arguing about all the little things that feminists used to argue about, okay? So that's what I wanted to say today. I think we should be grateful to this lady that she is putting herself in personal danger and she is taking this message around the world. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Wonderful, thank you. yeah, that something else has happened in New Zealand, something about what teaching in schools or something else has happened in New Zealand. And then obviously I had a mass impact on the Netherlands election also. I just think it's really funny. I'll tell you something that we all share here. And I think part of it's being British, but also being women and being a little bit sophisticated. The TRAs, the thing that always astounds me is they've just got no banter. They're just not funny. There's a clip of me when we're surrounded by TRAs, and I think I'm very funny. And I basically say, I thought I had loads of friends on the far right. Come on, boys, where are you? And that's being used as evidence that I am clearly far right. And so I just share it because some TRA was like, this is evidence. And I was like, I'm just going to share this because it's one of my more funny moments. But I think if we can keep doing this, like this little community that we've built here is so lovely. When I was talking to Stella O'Malley on Benjamin Boyce's channel, I know you're all a big fan of Ben, but when I was talking, I was like, you know, we do get some women, I don't even know, who have been medically harmed by this ideology. I think is probably the best way to describe them. Because I think detransitioner sort of implies that they have transitioned, and transitioning is not really a thing. It's just a whole heap of medical harm that we put under this particular label called transition. But women that have been medically harmed by this ideology come here, and you just see them getting back into the fold of women, which is just a really lovely thing. And often I think we sort of think we're not particularly feminine, or we're not particularly this, or, you know, we're more than women or whatever, but I'm really, really, really a woman. But in the recognition of other women thing, when you're talking to a woman, there's certain things that don't cross your mind, like they might if you're talking to a man. And when you're in a community of women, and my God, there are some toxic, evil, awful women that we've all encountered in this movement. There are some really toxic women, but then you get these moments where everyone, you guys hopefully will all come to the pub, and then everyone's like laughing, and there's a commonality that I think sometimes we forget. But when I see a woman who has been medically harmed by this ideology, and she's exactly the same as any other one of us, and there's no differentiation between us and a woman harmed, I just think that's what this does. That's what this does. It really does build bridges that I don't think can be replicated in any other sort of activism other than a genuine grassroots, bottom up, no voices down, all bottom up activism that we do here at Let Women Speak. And it's for that reason that it works everywhere I go. It's the same, women are the same the world over, because we identify our community as a common experience of the things usually that society expects, but often from our biology and the things that we have to go through to reach the ripe old age. And then women get very boring talking about menopause and perimenopause, but that's another kind of bit where we all just admit the same. You know, I'm not quite there yet, but I know that I'm going to have a lot of joyous, long conversation about night sweats. So, you know, catch me later. Come. Yes. And you can bring your cat. There's another one. Well, that is like a cat. There you go. I don't know which is which now.
I'm going to tell you about Jane, not her real name. She was critically ill and confused and distressed. While attending to her personal care, she disclosed that she didn't want any men present. I escalated this to the nurse in charge, while in my unit, only females attended her. Some weeks later, I saw Jane. she was in a 6-bed bay with 5 men. I introduced myself and quietly retold her what she'd said to me when she was confused under my care, that she only wanted females to give her personal care. She momentarily froze, closed her eyes, then opened them and gave me full eye contact and stated that it sounded very much like something she would have said. She divulged that she'd been raped when she was young. I inquired how she was dealing with being a patient. She said she was getting used to it. She just had a tracing of her heart performed by a man, and she said she was coping. Her body language told another story. I informed her that I would speak to the nurse in charge about female-only intimate care. As I said goodbye to Jane, I had a sinking feeling that we were institutionally failing women like her, the 6.4 million women in the UK who've been raped at least once since their 16th birthday. Women don't want to constantly relive their past trauma by explaining why they've requested single-sex care. It should be standard. Whether in hospital or in the community, safeguarding women from sexual predation can only occur if we exclude all men from carrying out intimate care. Gender ideology must be removed from policies as it despises women and their boundaries that keep them safe. This mild-looking male healthcare worker raped, sexually assaulted and tortured elderly women with dementia. He targeted them as they were unable to protest, defend or report his behaviour. So it is time that we in healthcare stand up and tell our colleagues, our CEOs, our safeguarding directors that we want to protect women from the institutional rape and sexual assault in our care. Thank you.
Just to reiterate, one of the things we're doing at Let Women Speak, and if you want, we're now letwomenspeak.org. We're switching over to Let Women Speak just because it's better recognised, and I think it does speak about what we actually do. If you have to go into a school or a hospital appointment or a doctor's appointment where you don't feel your sex-based rights of having single-sex care will be respected, whether you're elderly, and we've had some really good callers. In fact, I had a call the other day from Healthy Ages. But we've had some really good advice from callers. It basically says, even if you're a married couple and you're elderly, you are not the advocate of your spouse if they have dementia without power of attorney. So next of kin doesn't give you the right over the council, the social care system, to insist that your spouse has single-sex care. Now this can happen, like early onset dementia or Alzheimer's can happen a lot younger than when you're elderly. So just as a matter of urgency really, if you're in any realm or anyone you care for is even close to that sort of diagnosis, you have to make sure that you become an advocate while they're still considered legally compos mentis to make that decision. So if you want someone to come along with you to any of the appointments on behalf of an elderly relative or yourself, we had a woman who was too worried, stage 4 cancer. She was too worried at that point that if she pissed people off in the hospital, that she wouldn't be treated very well. So if you want someone else to be the person to piss off people in the hospital and save you, and maybe it's not a battle you want to fight, but it is one that you want to be fought on your behalf, then that is something that we will do. Now, I'm not claiming we're experts at all, but we are advocates. We are grown women who will sit beside you and either give you the strength to speak for yourself, or under your instructions, we will speak for you. But that's something I think is really important, because often the people that we rely on in our own lives, they don't want to get involved in this. They don't want to be accused of being a bigot or a transphobe. They would rather just sit quiet and let shit rain upon them, or you, than stand up for you and be your advocate in that situation. They don't want to get involved. And we very much do want to get involved. And we think if our job isn't to stand beside people who feel vulnerable when asking for their rights to be upheld, then what good is what good is anything that we do? What is it for if it's not for those situations? Did anyone else want to speak? No? I'm reminded that there is a petition on...
Yeah, sorry, shall I come in and...
Oh, you're going to break the rule.
I know.
Go on, what's the petition on?
We have a petition to get the government to hold a statutory public inquiry into how gender ideology and queer theory has captured civil society, and would very much appreciate it if you could find that on. It's a government petition. Find it, sign it, share it with everyone. And hopefully it will go some way to solving this horrific problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Civic society, and I'm reminded again that it's the civil servants also captured. I went to a trial, the judicial review, the Harry Miller thing, and I was in there and I asked one of the clerks of the court if it was appropriate to wear a pride lanyard. And that was fed back to the judge as if there was a homophobe saying something homophobic to him, rather than, isn't it a political symbol? Is it appropriate? And I was reported as a homophobe. Not that I care. Okay, so I think we are... wrapped up then, and I think I want to be actually literally wrapped up because it's pig and freezing. So we will be back at the end of January here. I might do an online couple of things. So if you want to be part of that, you have to join so that we can send you Zoom invites, and then maybe people can actually speak virtually over the Christmas spell. But I hope you have a lovely Christmas, all of you, and thank you for making it out today. The march, I've just seen pictures on Twitter, the march is huge, so I don't know how you're getting home or where the march is, but I wish you well. Right, it's pub time, to the usual place. If you can come and stand in the cold and stand up for your rights, even when those around you behave like cowards, then we will win. If you can have conversations in which the trick is not to speak and to force your opinion, but to let the other person speak and reveal themselves, then I promise we will win. And do you know why else we're going to win? Because I never lose. Lovely, lovely.